I think ever since I was a kid, I would desperately count down the days for my birthday. As long as I was in school, those 24 hours, in fact, the entire month leading up to that very day, it would be a festive season in itself. And I know this might sound childish or selfish, but that day would be all about me. And I think that is what I love the most about it. And in addition to having a day all about me, I enjoyed every part of the process leading up to that event or that moment. So it wasn't just about having my day, but it was about the preparation, the guest list, the venue, the food, the planning, sending out the invites, going shopping, and most importantly, the anticipation of having a perfect day where you're surrounded by your friends and family and all your close people. And I think I have some very fond memories of certain birthdays that I had as a child. My parents would go all out in planning and inviting, in decoration, in food, the music, the theme, and whatnot. And oh, also the return gifts. That was such a big thing when we were younger. I remember this one scene very vividly on every birthday. I would walk into the house and I would see my dad setting up the entire hall with balloons and streamers and banners and every kind of decoration item possible. And he'd be covered in sweat and, he'd be insanely exhausted. But in that moment, I felt so nice. I felt so special that someone's putting that kind of effort in planning that day for me or ensuring that everything goes perfectly. And that scene pans into like the living room, the hall, and the kitchen. And I would see my mom preparing for the food, the plating, and everything. She would get these fancy cartoon printed plates for everyone. And I used to think that that was the coolest thing in the world at that point for me. I would quickly rush to my room, take a quick shower, and just sit in front of the mirror and just adore looking at myself dressing up in my perfect dress that I picked out and just sitting in anticipation, all dressed up, all nicely done. And one very memorable moment that I used to have as a kid was that I used to get to apply lipstick on my birthday. So that was something that I really looked forward to as well. But somehow, as I grew older, I don't know how or why or when, that spark for having a memorable day just kind of faded away. Because the older you get, the more complicated things seem to be. As a kid, everything's easy. It's so easy to be happy as a kid. Maybe I didn't realize that back then. But those fancy Tom and Jerry masks and those little return gifts or that piece of cake with samosa and chips was all that was required to have a good day. But as you grow older, that's not all that is needed. You have more demands, you have more complicated demands, not just from people, but also from your expectations of that entire day. Throughout my teenage years, despite planning everything to the T, something would always go wrong. Like, I would end up getting stuck in traffic on my way to my party, or I'd get into an argument with my parents right before I was leaving over my outfit, or my best friend would call me at the last moment to cancel, or I would get ignored by my crush like during that event, or oh my god, the worst possible thing, someone trying to steal my thunder at my party in front of all my friends. That's probably the most annoying feeling on your special day. Like growing up, I've had different groups of friends. I've never had one singular group. So, whenever I would have a birthday party, it would be such a task for me to go around and make sure that everyone's having a good time. And it would just take so much energy from me to ensure that everyone's having a good time and no one's feeling left out, no one's sitting in a corner by themselves, or no one's, you know, just feeling bad. And it was not just me, my entire family. Like, if my sister would be there, my mom would be there, they would spend so much time chatting with my friends and ensuring that everyone is a part of it, which I'm sure is a very good thing. And also a very necessary thing where you're having a group event. But as a person trying to celebrate their existence, I don't think that should be your priority. And fortunately or unfortunately, I spent so many years just trying to get over that kind of social gap, which I wasn't responsible for, but somehow I was made to feel responsible for overcoming that gap. And that's not it. Shit always gets more complicated than that. Okay, story time. This one time, I decided to have two different parties, one for my friends from school and one for my friends from my neighborhood, my colony friends. Of course, these were two different groups belonging to two very different parts of my life, and I had no intention of mixing these two up. One of my friends from school, who was a very close friend at the time, she realized that there's this one guy that she liked who was coming on the other party, the one with my neighborhood friends, and she chose to self invite herself. And that was something so shocking to me because I think I was 12 or 13 at the time. I didn't realize the concept of ulterior motives that well. I was a stupid kid. I was very naive at that time. I might I might have thought that I was very smart and very like I could read people well, but I was very bad at that if I'm being honest right now. So in that moment, of course I said yes. How could you say no to someone inviting themselves to a party that you're throwing? At that point, I didn't realize how weird or how problematic that whole concept was. And when the day of the other party finally arrived, I ended up doing the same thing that I was trying to avoid in the first place. And at the end of the day, I was the one who was left with the responsibility of ensuring that everyone was having a good time, which sucked for me. I think a couple years back, I was back home from college and I decided to have a very close gathering of not more than 10, 12 people, just my closest friends, and was a very low key, chill setting. I think everyone knew everyone, so there was no added responsibility for me to go around and introduce people or try to break the ice or gap the awkwardness, which was good. But there was a friend of mine at the time who broke up with her boyfriend at the time, who also happened to be at the party. And instead of having a good time with me or being involved with the entire group, she spent the entire evening dancing with some other dude only to make her ex feel bad. And being on the viewer side of this, it just seems like a very shitty thing to do. And more importantly, being the host, being the person who is supposed to be the center of attention at the party, at that event, it's honestly quite frustrating to feel like that. And this is not coming from a narcissistic point of view that, oh, I want to be the center of attention at all time. But events like these, moments like these where people choose to act like this, it just goes to show how much they really care about you and your feelings. A lot of them might not agree with me. A lot of them might have justifications or excuses for their behavior, but those excuses don't exactly make me feel better. They didn't make me feel better back then, they won't make me feel better now. I had to make some tough decisions, but I think moving away from such people was probably the best thing to do. Now, once I became an adult, I realized that adult birthdays are so different, are honestly a little sad as well. Because as you grow up, you have lesser time and even lesser energy to actually plan to have a fun time. For example, up till last year, I think, life for me was all about great things, about going above and beyond for plans, for goals, for people, for everything. But this year, somehow things took a very weird turn. I used to be a person so excited for everything, looking forward to everything. But I started the year on a completely different note. I just wanted to be alone. I just wanted to be at peace. I wanted to enjoy my solitude. At max, I would want to be with the closest two or three friends, my innermost circle, where I don't have to think before doing or saying anything. It was honestly shocking to me how I went from a person who used to have a guest list of 80 to 100 people every year without fail to being a person who only invited 3 people to their birthday dinner, out of which only 2 showed up. So I think the point that I'm trying to make is that this year I chose peace. I chose being by myself no matter how lonely or boring the process might have seemed like. Of course, I wanted to embrace the close connections that I have, and I did that quite well, I feel. And I did that whether they're around me physically or on the other side of the world. This year, I decided that I want to sit in comfort and in warmth instead of choosing to be in a room full of people with loud music and a lot of complicated energy. Because whether you want to accept it or not, the more the people, the more drama gets carried into your life. Of course, getting older doesn't mean that you take a step back from a chance of celebrating yourself. It's just that your idea of having a good time kind of evolves. And going beyond the celebration aspect of things, as an adult, there's a very interesting thing that has started to happen these days. Now, every year, I give myself these goals or resolutions, if you want to call them, which may start at the beginning of the new year, but there's a definite moment of self reflection with every birthday. Now, I have my birthday in July, which means that we've been well into the year. We've spent close to 7 months of the year. So I feel that that's a good point to sort of take a step back and realize how far you've come and how far you need to go. Your goals, your aspirations, and what kind of resolutions would you like to add or subtract or change for the rest of the year? So I asked myself some uncomfortable, maybe, but some really pertinent questions this time, such as, did I take care of myself and my needs? Or am I setting achievable goals for myself? Or rather, am I just setting rational goals for myself? Do I need to give up certain things that make me feel secure but no longer serve my growth or evolution? It's so easy to get attached to certain things or people or places or behaviors or habits, but you need to know when to cut. After having that moment of reflection, I've realized that it's time for a change. A little change, but an important one nevertheless. That change would be to move away from this idea of security, because I don't think any of us will ever feel completely secure in our lives. There always will be some aspect which has certain loose ends, certain imbalance, certain inconsistency. So there is no point in aspiring for complete security, which is what I think I've been trying to do for the longest time. Being emotionally secure, being physically secure, being financially secure, and in many more ways. And I think I'd like to end this with a quote, a really nice one that I came across on Instagram, I think, which said, "Wanting what you have is its own form of wealth." And I think that's beautiful. I wish I could quote the source, but it was some Instagram reel that I lost now. At least I noted it down. So I'm thankful for that. So, yeah, this was episode 1 of Thought Vault Birthday.